Hi everybody, this is Steve from HitItLonger.com, and today we're looking at Phil Mickelson. Won last week, and looks like he may win in LA as well for 2 in a row. Let's take a look at Phil at his best. This is a wedge that he holds out from 112 yards on the 8th hole, long par 4. Huge drive here. You notice that he's going to make a really full release. He's bringing the ball in with a draw. It looks a lot like number 7 at Augusta a couple years ago when he went on to shoot a 29 on the front 9. Let's watch that again. The day he shot 29 at Augusta on the front 9 to tie the record, he drew everything in there. He is playing at his best when he's playing a draw right now. Let's go back and look at that again. The reason he's playing a draw and he's so natural coming from the inside right now is because his shoulder line tends to be flat. It tends to be too straight and not steep enough. If he were to just ride this naturally, he should be coming from the inside a little bit and hitting a draw, like he does on this shot. He makes a good pivot. He has a compound pivot, very similar to Mike Austin. He releases the crap out of this thing, gives him a lot of touch with his hands, and he's able to work the ball in a little bit left to right for him with draw spin. Now if we take a look at a really poor drive that he hits here on the 9th hole, this drive probably has a club face of 6 degrees open. This ball is so far left, and the reason is because he's not on the same axis coming through with his shoulders as he was on the wedge. Notice at the top of the swing, he's across the line to the left, pointing to the left. Normally, this should come back around and be an inside-out swing with a draw pattern, a push-draw pattern. But this is not. This is a gigantic block. And let's take a look why. Let's take a look first at the reason why he's on the inside a little too much going back, crossing the line. Again, I mentioned his shoulder angle being too flat. Of course, the camera is not in exact position that we'd like, but we can get an estimate on his shoulder line, which is about 25 to 26 degrees. So it's not even 30 degrees where he should have started his swing bent over. In fact, we can measure the hip angle. I don't even think it's as steep as the angle that he's bent over at the moment. So let's take a look at that. Here's the lower back, and that's about 29 degrees. So his shoulders are actually flatter than he's bent over, which is tough to do. It means he's not even winding around his spine perpendicularly, like if you think of a T. Think of a T. If you bend to 30 degrees and you just wind around that, you should end up 30 degrees tilted at the shoulders, and he's only 26. Now in an analysis of Mike Austin that I did, I noticed that his angles were tilted at over 40 degrees. So this is a much steeper shoulder turn, keeping the shoulder wheel much more on plane with the ball. This ball should head out just like the wedge. It should head out in this direction, draw over the bunker, and come back to the center this way in the position he's at now. The difference will be that he will not make a good pivot like he did with the wedge. This is why he's so hit and miss with the driver. Obviously he's winning because his putter's great, his wedges are great, but his driver is still a little bit erratic. He's not hitting a ton of fairways overall, even in this win streak. So let's erase this and let's take a look at actually what he does coming through. We'll play it in full motion a couple times. I want you to see that Phil does not make as big of a lateral bump here. He stunts the lateral bump and turns his hips through very flat. That'll take his shoulders around very flat. This is putting him in position to hit an absolutely horrible smother hook. We'll take a look at it a little slower now. I'll pause it on the keyframe here. Again, there's across the line. This is where he should be dropping under, just like the wedge. But instead of dropping under, his hips immediately turn out of the way without any lateral shift. This should be a terrible smother hook this way into the crowd, low into the right. So he has to hold on to it with his hands and hold off the release, unlike what he does with the wedge, where it's a very freewheeling release because his body's in an under position on the correct axis to hit the ball with a full release and hit it dead straight. If he were to release full on this one, it would be a very crooked shot to the right. So the result is a horizontal swing plane a little bit to the right, holding on with a very open face. Terrible block. So look for this tomorrow and in upcoming weeks for whenever the situation calls for a draw. Look for Phil to really be able to hammer it out there. But other than that, look for him to hit some pretty crooked shots still. All right, this is Steve. I'll see you next time.